This is TWiT.
Zach has some information from his sources. I actually should let him explain this about how the Windows schedule may change in the coming months and years. Zach?
Yeah, so I guess we should just dive straight into it. So I heard a little while ago now at this point that Microsoft was changing up its development sort of cycle or schedule for Windows going forward. And I started asking around about this because a couple of weeks back, Microsoft started testing build 22622 in the Insider beta channel, and they announced that as a sort of enablement package. And I was immediately sort of wondering why they were doing enablement package testing on Windows 11 so early on into its life, right? You know, the enablement package stuff didn't start showing up on Windows 10 until, a few years in. So why were they doing that now on Windows 11? Started asking around, and that sort of opened up I went down a rabbit hole that I was not expecting to go down, and essentially found out from multiple sources at this point that Microsoft is moving away from its annual sort of major release of Windows and is moving to a major release every 3 years with feature drops in between. Now, they call the feature drops moments. We'll get to all of that in a minute. But the big news here is they are going back to one release every 3 years, similar to how they did Windows Vista to Windows 7 or Windows 7 to Windows 8. From Windows 11 to Windows 12, ? We don't know what that's going to be called, but that appears to be what they're sort of going for now, starting in 2024. So Windows 11 came out in 2021, 3 years later, 2024, that's when we can expect the next version of Windows. And that's pretty big news, at least to me, because we are going back to the sort of traditional development cycle for major versions of the OS. And will that be a good thing? I want to hear your guys' thoughts, because I know I think. What do you guys think?
I know it is big news, but were you guys expecting this? Because I feel like I was waiting for this to happen at some point. They've pretty much, we've had Windows as a service with Windows 10 that was originally planned to be the last version of Windows. And then something happened where PCs got popular again. They needed something to make Windows exciting again. They did Windows 11. And I think when Windows 11 happened, it was clear that Windows 12 was going to happen at some point. And then now we're starting to see they're releasing features in many different ways. Insider testing is kind of a mess. You're in different channels. You might get features, you might not. Now there's an enablement package where you can choose to get new features. And it's so much of a mess that you kind of have to start to ask, does it make sense to do yearly updates anymore? Windows 10 is still doing yearly updates with enablement packages, and they don't even have features. It's just like to introduce a new support lifecycle. Like, they could just have the same update and say it ends in 2025. Like, this stuff doesn't make sense to do anymore. So knowing that there would eventually be a Windows 12, I think every 3 years made sense. And I was kind of waiting for this to happen eventually. Do you guys agree, or Mary Jo?
No, not really, because
okay.
Well, okay, so last year they made a huge deal out of having this once a year update, right? Right. And all the IT people were like, yes, that's what I wanted. I wanted them to only do one update a year. And they had a whole elaborate explanation. They did it for Windows 10, Windows 11. And now it's like, oh, wait, no, actually just forget that, right? Like, we're going to
But I think things have even changed since then, though, don't you?
They have. Yeah, they have. No, because in February, I think it was February, Panos, remember that blog post when they started talking about, by the way, we can drop features anytime we want. Remember that blog post? And it was like, wait, okay, so we're going to have one update a year, but you can actually drop features whenever you want. So what's the one update a year even mean? Right.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Because the first one was the Windows subsystem for Android in the Amazon App Store. But they announced this with the Windows 11 launch. It didn't launch with Windows 11. And then it's like, well, I guess we'll have it later this year. Well, we're not going to say when we're going to have it actually, but maybe not the next feature. It's like, what are you guys even talking about? So that arrived at some point. It comes to the store, and they have web feature experience packs. I don't even know the names of all these feature experience packs.
No one does.
But there's so many ways of dropping new features that what is that once a year feature update even there for anymore?
I know. I agree. Okay, so let's play devil's advocate. On the negative side, this takes away predictability, right? So that's the one thing IT loves, predictability. Mm-hmm. It's like suddenly it's like we knew you could drop features anytime, but now you're saying Zach's story, the moments thing, even that name is so stupid. Moments, really? Like, come on.
It sounds like
but that's on brand for Microsoft.
it's like Snapchat Stories, but inside of Microsoft. It is a very strange name for it.
No, it's such a PR name, right? Because sometimes I feel like when Microsoft's doing something, they say they call it a moment. Like we're having a moment about, AI or whatever. Okay. So anyways, forget this, how weird the name is, but they might have these drops every up to 4 times a year. Okay. So there will be Zach's sources say a new version, whatever that really means. A new, does it mean a whole new version where everything is different? Does it mean that you're going to have to reboot and you're not going to use an enablement package? We don't really even know what that means, right? And then you're going to have all these other updates dropping willy-nilly. Like, is it going to be every quarter? Maybe. Or is it going to be 3 of them back to back and then 1 at the end of the year? We don't know, right? So on the negative side, I say this takes away predictability. On the positive side, which is what I think, this is stuff Panos and his team care a lot about, it brings excitement back, right? We're going to surprise you guys with new features.
I think also Windows 12 brings excitement back. Just the idea of having a new version of Windows. I mean, as writers who are writing content about this stuff, we see that there is a ton more interest when they have an actual new version of Windows. For sure. And it is not the same amount of interest for a feature update to Windows. And I'm sure they see that, and they like it when they can get people excited.
Yeah.
How does Microsoft... So one of the things that, I'm always thinking about in terms of different so an example is today Amazon is doing its ALEXA live event, which is an event for developers, but there's all these announcements of new ways that developers can make use of ALEXA and do a bunch of fun stuff with that. Does Microsoft have events where they announce specifically the new version of software? Is it typically the blog post idea where you go and you see the new features there? Because that schedule of once a year versus every 3 years, that seems like a long time to wait between new versions of Windows. But, I'm not in the Windows camp regularly, so I can understand how that's different.
Well, that's what the moments are going to be for, right? The moments really only exist to sort of keep Windows current when we have major updates coming from other platforms. Windows needs to keep current somehow, especially if there's only one major version every 3 years. So these moments are sort of step in and keep Windows up to date and fresh with new features up to 4 times a year, as Mary Jo mentioned. That doesn't mean they will do it 4 times a year. They may only do it twice in 1 year or maybe once in 1 year. I think it will depend on what features they have lined up and ready to go. And it benefits Microsoft internally because, these feature teams who are working on features all throughout the year have often had to wait for the annual release in the fall. If your feature's done in January, that's kind of annoying, isn't it? Because you have to wait for the rest of the year. With these moments, if your feature's done in January, we can say, right, when's the next moment? Oh, it's in February. Cool, we can line this feature up for February. And so these features get out sooner for these product teams as well. And then, of course, they can also start working and do major sort of investments to the platform for these major versions every 3 years because they now have a longer runway to make meaningful improvements to the OS rather than in 6 months, oh my God, we have another feature update we've got to do. What do we put in it? And have no time to really actually make anything proper out of that. So there are benefits to it. It will be interesting to see how IT admins are allowed to control the moments aspects because I think IT admins will be happy with the move to 3 years for major releases. And I'm not too sure how they're going to feel about the moments possibly every few months. Assuming IT admins can control it, I think it'll be a bit better. But if they can't, that might be a problem, right?
Right.
Would it be accurate to draw a comparison really quick? Would it be accurate to draw a comparison between Android's Google Play services updates and this moments thing? Is that the idea that instead of tying everything to a release cycle, you can just do it when
Pixel feature drop?
Pixel feature drop. Exactly. That's how it was described to me. It's essentially look at what Google does with the Pixel. Every month or every couple of months, they will do a feature drop outside of major versions of the Android OS. And, they still get those every year. But there are individual features that show up for Pixel users. And the same can be said for Windows in these moments. Every few months, there'll be a few new features. I doubt there'll be huge changes to the UX and things that you have to relearn. I think these will just sort of include enhancements to the existing product, so things that make whatever you've got better rather than changing things drastically. I could be wrong about that. Who knows what they're planning? But I would be crazy for them to sort of do a Windows 8 style change in a moment, right? No way would they change the UX that drastically.
Right.
But that's what they could save the major releases for. If they wanted to build hype and a story around a major version of Windows, if they were planning to do any significant UX work that changed things around, they could save that for the major versions every 3 years.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be really good. I think it may, like Zach said, they'll have a longer runway to put major releases of Windows together. Windows 11, we know it was kind of rushed. It was put together in less than a year, and now that we're seeing a feature update this year, that's really just more of a complete version, and features that were in Windows 10 are coming back. So. Being able to plan that every 3 years, I think it's going to be good for everyone.
Well, the one thing we don't know is the support time frame and how that's going to change, right? So just because they release a new version of Windows every 3 years, is that going to mean they support versions of Windows for 3 years? Because if it does, IT will love that, right? But what if it isn't that? What if it is... And you have to update to this group of moments in order to remain within support for the next year and a half or whatever. Like, you can see them doing that, right? Like, Microsoft wants people to be on the latest version all the time because they feel like it makes people happier when they have the new features. At least that's what they say, right? So if you're the IT person, you're like, yeah, but how do I like make sure people are all on the same version, and some may be on this version or that version, and then you have to figure in how long is it supported, and like how is that going to work? I just feel like it sounds fun from an announcement perspective, and it makes it more exciting for us as the reporters because we're going to have more to write about. But if you're the people trying to implement this across your company, and especially if you're a big company, I think there are a lot of things that could go wrong.
I bet support ends up being...
show.
Is this though then Windows or Microsoft rather? There we go through all the names. Is this Microsoft's way of doing what you have been, which was odd coming from you, Mary Jo? But I remember you asking at the end of the year about how Microsoft was looking to be more for consumers at the time. And you asked, what in this past year showed that you were focusing on that. Is this one of those things? Because as you said, it doesn't seem like it's very focused on the IT folks and the folks who are needing to make sure that this, that they can support it. But instead, as a person who's not in that, who just has my Elvis laptop that I like to get new features on from time to time, as a seeker, yes, this is exciting. I'm looking forward to all of these, and I think that the Microsoft or the Windows fans out there, of which there are many, will be excited about this. Is this a consumer-facing change to the schedule more so than a company change?
I say yes, for sure. It is. And, when Panos took over Windows Client, Panos cares about Apple. That's who Panos cares about, right? So, to be very blunt. And he wants anything that Apple's doing, like if Apple's updating their new OS to version 12 or version 13, he wants to be right there, right? He thinks about things from a consumer perspective, for sure. The older guard at Microsoft that's not here anymore, some of them were very much more attuned to the needs of IT pros and businesses because that's Microsoft's bread and butter. And if you really care about that group of people, like what you're proposing here, it sounds like a nightmare to me. I don't know. I understand the excitement part and cool, we get new features and look at this. This is really nice. But if you're somebody rolling things out through rings or trying to make it so that you don't have to retrain your employees on stuff, like this probably sets off a lot of alarm bells for you.